You might have seen headlines over the last few days that the NHS is now trialling a new test that could diagnose the serious condition of sepsis in just 15 minutes. And Zam, we were saying at the top of the show, this can only be really positive news.
So it's very exciting. Sepsis is a big killer in the UK, 50,000 people a year. And part of the problem is that it's difficult to get a rapid diagnosis. It's hard to catch it early. This is a new test that's being trialled by the NHS in 3 hospitals: St Mary's in London, Alderhay Children's Hospital in Liverpool, and the Great North Children's Hospital in Newcastle. And it looks at 3 different markers in the blood and combines them to give you a score. And the key thing is that it's telling the difference between a bacterial infection and a viral infection. And traditional methods to do that have been much slower, but this gets you a result in 15 minutes. So it's not a complete diagnosis of sepsis, but it's one more piece of the puzzle to get you the treatment you need early, which is great news.
So the tests are currently being done on children, but this is something that so many people will be aware of. You hear sepsis, you're alarmed, but just remind us what it is.
So sepsis is very complex because there are lots of routes to sepsis. And maybe the best way to think about sepsis is that it is your body inappropriately responding to an injury or damage, usually from an infection. But in fact, you can get a sepsis-like syndrome from things like burns as well. But if we think of those infections, you could have a viral, a bacterial, or a fungal infection, and that triggers an immune response, which gives you a cascade of problems. So, for instance, it might make your blood vessels more leaky, and that lowers your blood pressure. Well, that makes your heart work harder, and it fills your lungs with water. So then you've got less oxygen and less blood flowing around your body, and that makes your kidneys fail. And once your kidneys have failed, that makes it more difficult for all those other organs. And so you can be in a kind of downward spiral very rapidly. That's what makes it so dangerous. It is more dangerous in older people and in babies. But in terms of the core understanding of what's going on, it's almost an inappropriate reaction. And obviously you are to an infection, and you are more vulnerable if you are elderly, your immune system doesn't work as well, or if you're very young.
As you know, we've spoken about sepsis on the show before, actually. BBC Radio 2 DJ Tony Blackburn did a film for us on it, sharing his own experience of developing sepsis. He also spoke to other people who'd experienced it too. This is who he met. This is one of the guys he's met, called Mark.
I was out once mountain biking. I came home with 3 quite angry-looking bites on my arm, and then a couple of weeks later, my arm just stopped moving one day, and I went to bed that night with fever and breathless.
Mark was admitted to hospital with an infection in his shoulder.
So they operated on my shoulder to just take out the infection, and then whilst I was anaesthetised, my kidneys failed, my liver failed, and my lungs filled with fluid.
Due to the infection, Mark's body went into septic shock, the most severe stage of sepsis. He spent the next 10 days in ICU fighting for his life.
And Zand, it's how quickly it can become out of control.
I think that's what makes it so terrifying, is that we see stories of people like Mark, Mark is a young, healthy, active guy who collapses almost in a matter of minutes. His body systems start to fail. And it's very difficult to talk about sepsis without making people terribly anxious, because the truth is it can start from a very small cut. You could prick your finger on a rose, you could get a small scratch or a bite or a wound. Still, the risk for most of those things is very low, as all of us know from our life experience. And so perhaps the main thing to say is you want to just keep an eye on your body not responding the way it should, on things that aren't healing, on things that aren't spreading. And clearly deep wounds, big wounds, surgical wounds, things like that, they do pose more of a risk. But yeah, Mark's story is a great example of how devastating this can be.
Another story that is definitely worth listening to is that of Beth. She explains to Tony how the early signs of sepsis can be mistaken for a common cold.
I had pain in my side Christmas Eve, which was just getting worse. I found out when I got to A&E that what I thought was a bit of a cold was actually flu and pneumonia.
Beth developed sepsis as a result of her body trying to fight off pneumonia. The sepsis then led to septic shock, and the pain she felt in her side was her kidneys shutting down.
So I had complete renal failure, respiratory failure. Boxing Day morning, they called my family and basically said that I'd had complete organ failure and to prepare for the worst.
You hear things like that, Zand, and you understand why people are so alarmed, and rightly so. So what are the signs? At what point do you go, hang on a minute, this is a bit more serious than a cold?
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, Beth's story is great because she is sort of approaching sort of total organ failure, as she describes, and yet she's treating it as the flu. And I think in the UK, we are a nation of people who don't like to bother the doctor. And a lot of the time, that's quite appropriate, and you do get better. So let me run you through a few of the warning signs. Start with slurred speech or confusion. Anyone with slurred speech or confusion needs medical help quickly. Extreme shivering or muscle pain. We're talking about big rigors, uncontrollable shaking. You know, you feel like your muscles are kind of melting. If you're not weeing at all, I mean, a full day to not go for a wee, you should be drinking well before that. And if you're not passing any urine, that's a big deal. Severe breathlessness, again, you need medical help. If you don't know why you're breathless, you need medical help. And skin mottled or discolored, and I can show you that. I have a glass here, but if you have a rash on your arm and you roll a glass over it and you can see through the glass that rash isn't going away, those are little blood clots under the skin, which could be a sign of sepsis. So, but the key thing is sort of that awful feeling of impending doom. And I think a lot of people who've had sepsis or a severe illness will relate to going, oh, actually looking back, although maybe I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was, I felt like I was about to die. And if you are feeling like that, never be embarrassed to pick up the phone and dial 999 or to get onto an urgent appointment to your GP or to go to A&E.
Are the symptoms the same for children?
It's harder diagnosing things in children. Again, we're looking at urine output. If you haven't had any urine output in 12 hours, if they're vomiting repeatedly, if they're not feeding, if they have a weak, high-pitched cry, if they're lethargic or difficult to wake. And I would say, again, if you are a parent or a guardian, if you're looking after a kid and you're looking at them thinking, I don't know what it is, I'm not a doctor, but this doesn't look right, they're not the right colour, they're not responding right, call 999. I cannot tell you, as a parent myself, this has happened to me and Dolly, and you just, that instinct, that feeling in your bones that something isn't right is worth paying attention to, because by the time I haven't weed for 12 hours, you know, you're a bit of a way down the road.
And if you take this advice and take it seriously, then it is possible to recover from sepsis, of course. Thank you very much for now, Zand.
Thanks, Zand. More